I never imagined that my entire life, my identity, my sense of belonging, would be shattered and rebuilt in a single night because of a dust-covered letter hidden behind a loose brick in my grandmother's old study. And before you judge anything I'm about to tell you, I want you to keep one question in mind. If your whole family had lied to you for 20 years, stolen what was yours, and twisted history for their own benefit, would you confront them publicly the way I did? Or would you have stayed silent to keep the peace? Because I didn't stay silent. And the fallout, well, let's just say it didn't just break a 20-year inheritance feud. It exposed everything my family spent decades hiding. It all started the night I returned to my grandmother's abandoned house, the house everyone in my family treated like a cursed memory. They always said Grandma Evelyn died peacefully. But the way everyone avoided her name, avoided the property, avoided even discussing her final years, told me something was deeply off. Still, I was raised not to question things. I grew up believing that adults had reasons for everything, and that it wasn't my place to ask. But as I got older, I realized how many of those reasons were actually convenient lies, especially when it came to money. My family has always treated wealth like oxygen, as in, they can't breathe without it. Every gathering was really just a disguised competition. Who bought a new car? Who invested in new property? Who accidentally mentioned their savings account? But the biggest competition of all, the one no one ever said out loud, was over Grandma Evelyn's estate. Growing up, I had a special bond with her. She was the only person in the entire family who didn't care about money. She cared about books, tea, handwritten letters, and sunlight. When I was a kid, she'd sit me beside her window and tell me stories about her childhood, losing her husband young, raising 3 kids alone, building the house with her own money so no one could ever take it from her. She used to tell me, "This house holds truths no one wants to face." I never understood it until now. When she passed away, I was only 16, still too young to understand legal documents or estate settlements. But I'll never forget how quickly everyone swooped in. My Uncle Martin practically parked himself in the lawyer's office. My Aunt Sylvia cried dramatically and said she deserved more because she was closest to Grandma, a blatant lie. And my father, who always stayed quiet, barely said a word as they all carved up her estate like vultures picking at a fresh carcass. But here's the strangest part. Her house, the home she lived in for 52 years, the one she always said she would never sell, wasn't even discussed. They sold her furniture, her jewelry, even her teacup collection that she told me to keep one day. But the house just disappeared from the narrative. They acted like it didn't exist. And when I asked about it, they said, "The paperwork was messy. We just let the bank take it." Something about that answer always felt wrong, like a puzzle piece jammed in the wrong place, but close enough that no one questioned it. For years, I let it go. Life moved on. I graduated, got a job, moved to another city, but that house stayed in the back of my mind like a ghost. And then, 3 months ago, I got a call from the local municipality. The woman on the phone said, "Are you the descendant of Evelyn Hayes?" When I confirmed, she said, "The property under her name is overdue for structural review. Someone needs to come sign paperwork. You're listed as next contact since your father didn't respond." My father didn't respond? That alone was weird. He responds to anything involving property faster than he responds to birthday messages. I drove there that weekend. The house was still standing, barely, covered in vines and dust, but unmistakably Grandma's. When I stepped inside, the air was thick with that smell of old paper, dried flowers, and time itself. Everything was frozen, untouched, as if she'd just stepped out for tea and never returned. I walked room to room, feeling like a silent trespasser in my own memories. And then I entered her study, the room she always kept locked, the room she said held the truths no one wanted. The desk drawers were empty except for a few old pens and ink bottles, but something in the room felt unfinished. My gut told me to look deeper. That's when I noticed a brick near the bookshelf, sticking out slightly, as if someone had loosened it before. I pulled it free, and dust flew everywhere, stinging my eyes. Behind the brick was a small wooden box, tied with a faded gray ribbon. Inside that box was the letter. The letter that changed everything. It was addressed to me, my name, written in her elegant handwriting. My hands were shaking as I opened it. The paper was yellowed, the ink slightly smudged, but I could still make out every word. And as I read, my entire world tilted. She wrote that she knew the family would fight over her estate. She wrote that she'd tried to talk to them for years, but greed had turned them into strangers. She wrote that the house, her most valuable asset, was never meant to go to my father, or my uncle, or my aunt. It was meant for me. She listed specific reasons. I listened to her stories. I helped her with groceries. I spent time with her simply because I wanted to, not to earn something. She said she tried to put my name directly on the deed, but my uncle intervened, convincing her she was too old and too confused to make legal decisions. She wrote that they manipulated her, cornered her, and eventually forced her to sign over power of attorney, effectively cutting me out. She apologized for not being strong enough in the end, but she also wrote something else, something that made my blood boil. The truth is hidden in the second envelope. Use it only when you're ready. Beneath the letter was a sealed envelope, thicker, heavier. Inside were copies of legal documents including the real will, the will that gave the house entirely to me, not split 3 ways, not shared, not contested, mine. And attached was proof that my uncle and aunt had pressured her to sign a forged amendment just 2 months before her death. I sat there on the dusty floor, my grandmother's handwriting trembling in my hands, and I felt a rage I didn't know I was capable of. 20 years. 20 years of being lied to. 20 years of being told I wasn't old enough to understand. 20 years of watching them brag about the money they gained, while I was left with memories and half-truths. I knew I couldn't let this go. Before I go any further, let me ask you again. If you found undeniable proof that your family stole what was rightfully yours, manipulated a dying woman, and lied to you for 2 decades, what would you do? Would you expose them? Would you confront them publicly like I eventually did? Pause for a moment and think, what would you have done in my shoes? Because what I did next, well, it changed everything. I didn't call them privately. I didn't ask for explanations. I didn't schedule a family meeting like my father always insisted on when someone messed up. No, I went straight to the person who handled the estate 20 years ago, the lawyer. When he saw the documents, his face went white. He remembered the original will. He remembered my uncle and aunt insisting that Grandma was mentally declining. But he also admitted he felt uneasy about it at the time and regretted not digging deeper. I asked him, "Can this be corrected?" He said yes. And not only that, what they did was illegal. Very illegal. So, with his guidance, I filed a formal challenge to the estate settlement, backed by the original will and the proof of fraud. When my family received the legal notice, all hell broke loose. My phone exploded with messages. My aunt called me screaming, saying I was tearing the family apart. My uncle texted me paragraphs calling me ungrateful, brainwashed, delusional. And my father, he came to my apartment in person, sat across from me, and said, "Let it go. It's been 20 years. Why dig up old wounds? I stared at him and asked, "Did you know?" He didn't answer. That silence told me everything. The next step was the court hearing, the day everything came crashing down. My entire family was there, sitting on one side, glaring at me like I was the villain. I sat alone on the other side with the lawyer. My heart was pounding, but when the judge asked me to speak, I read Grandma's letter aloud. The courtroom went silent. My aunt burst into tears, not the sad kind, the "I've been caught" kind. My uncle turned red, sweating through his shirt. My father stared at the ground like he wished he could disappear. Then the judge presented the original will, the real will. Within minutes, the entire fraudulent amendment they created collapsed, and the judgment was clear. The house legally belonged to me. The estate ruling from 20 years ago was overturned. On top of that, the judge ordered an investigation into my uncle and aunt for coercion and forgery. After the hearing, my aunt tried to approach me, crying, saying, "We only did it because you were young." I looked at her and said, "No, you did it because you're greedy." My uncle stormed out without a word. My father didn't follow them. He stayed behind, staring at me like he didn't recognize me. He said softly, "Your grandmother always loved you the most." And that was the closest thing to an apology I ever got. In the days that followed, everything shifted. The family WhatsApp group fell silent. Distant cousins messaged me privately saying they always suspected something. The house was returned to me officially after the investigation closed, and walking through it again, knowing it was truly mine, felt like reclaiming a piece of my soul. I restored the study first, cleaned every corner, replaced the brick, put the letter in a frame. Not because I needed proof anymore, but because I wanted to honor the woman who tried so hard to protect me, even when she didn't have the strength left to fight them. And as for my family, the inheritance feud that lasted 2 decades finally ended, but so did many relationships. I don't attend family gatherings anymore. I don't answer their calls. I don't owe them forgiveness. Sometimes people say, family is everything. But I've learned that family, real family, is not defined by blood. It's defined by loyalty, honesty, and love. And sometimes, the people you're related to are the ones who betray you the deepest. If you were on my side through all this, like this video. If you've ever faced family betrayal, share your thoughts in the comments. I genuinely want to hear your stories too. And don't forget to subscribe for more unbelievable real-life stories like this. I'll see you all in the next story.